Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 102 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 28 of A Clash of Kings. That's Bran 4. By the way, did you notice, I don't know if you noticed the English-American difference in that.
I did not.
Did you hear it?
No.
It's the episode number. How would you say the episode number?
102 or 102?
You said 102. I said 102.
Oh.
That's how British people would say that. And the very first time I wrote a check in the United States, the woman was familiar with British people, and she said, "Don't write the and."
Whoa.
You live and learn.
Whew, good thing she was there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously no one would have cashed a check that said $102.
Right. It would be like, what is this and doing in here?
Exactly. I'm giving you $100, I can give you $2, but what this and is, I have no idea.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and places in the chapter, particularly useful if you're not reading along. How are you this morning, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine. How about you?
I have nothing to complain about. I have a new board game, as you know.
I do. That was funny how that worked out.
That was funny because so there's a bulletin board at work where people sell things.
Like a virtual bulletin board.
A virtual bulletin board. And a guy posted that he had a board game for sale, and I was very interested. And Mackelly, being a thoughtful friend, saw the board game on the bulletin board and emailed me and said, "Have you seen this?" And I replied with a picture of me holding the board game because I'd already reached out to the guy, bought it, gone to his house, got it, and come home, and was reading the rule book by the time Mackelly noticed it. So.
A little slow, but you know,
but
the
you
intentions.
Weren't. It was like lunchtime. I got so excited when I saw this board game. I was like, "That's it! Cancel my day."
7 a.m. You're knocking on his door. Open up! Open up!
For those who are interested, it's Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, which, according to Board Game Geek, or The Geek, to those in the know, it's the number 6 board game of all time.
Wow, that guy, you got it for a pretty good price too, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not terribly expensive. I mean, its list price is about $40, but I got it for $20, and he'd only played it twice, so essentially it was pristine. So wow. I was very happy, very happy.
Okay.
And not only that, he didn't take Venmo, which is the American way of paying for things these days. So he said, cash or PayPal. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll find a way. And I checked in my wallet, and I found a $20 bill that had been there for at least 18 months. I mean, I haven't played for anything in cash in years. And I was like, okay. So essentially to me it was free. I was just giving away a piece of paper that I didn't even know I had. So.
Wow. Yes, it was destiny.
Mm-hmm. And it's very good. It's very good. We'll play it sometime.
All right.
I think you'll like it.
Okay.
I think your wife will disparage us while we play.
If we do it here, if we do it there, I don't know if Carson will react the same way.
Carson's played it and she liked it more than she thought she would.
Oh, okay.
I'll take that.
Yeah, that is definitely many steps further than how Stacy would react. Is it the kind of game that I like where everyone works together, or is it the contentious kind where everyone works against each other?
Yes, you kind-hearted soul. It is indeed a cooperative game.
Good.
I mean, unless you're lumping in the monsters with us, because we are not working with those guys.
Right. That's good. Those are the only kind of board games I can really get into. Is one where everybody's working together. Mm-hmm. So that fits my personality better.
It is your personality right there. We should get down to business.
We
How do we
should.
leave Bran Stark, Prince Bran Stark? Last we saw him, he was hosting the lords and ladies of the north at a harvest feast in Winterfell's Great Hall. The festivities were interrupted by the arrival of Meera and Jojen Reed from Greywater Watch in the Neck. That night, as Bran slept, he dreamt he was Summer in the Godswood. In the dream, Summer, or Bran, were visited by the Reed siblings. When Jojen touched Summer, Bran dropped out of Summer's body and began to fall. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
Okay. Bran and the Reeds are once again in the Godswood, although this time in the waking world. Meera is sparring with Summer, while Bran and Jojen spectate. Summer dives at Meera, landing on top of her. Bran thinks it's a victory for Summer. However, Jojen points out it's actually a loss. Meera has snared Summer in her net. It's all in good fun, though, and when Meera frees Summer from the net, he playfully carries Bran around before settling down and putting his head in the boy's lap.
You know, we read this chapter a bunch of times, and we write all these notes, and we read all these notes. It's just occurred to me that Summer could still have killed Meera. I mean, he couldn't bite his way through the net, but he's on top of her with his wolf-like claws.
Yes.
Simply extending them would have been, at best, it's a draw. And I would say that probably the wolf still won.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
It seems the rest of the highborn guests left soon after the harvest feast ended. However, the Reeds have stayed on and become Bran's closest companions, causing Bran to wish they were the Stark's wards instead of the Walder's Frey. Meera tells Bran about Greywater Watch always being on the move, and Bran would love to visit and see a floating castle. When Meera says he'd be welcome now, if he'd like, Bran thinks on the possibility his best bet for success would be to ask Sir Roderick, as Maester Lewin would never allow it, but Winterfell's castellan has been ridden east to deal with an issue.
Seems that Roose Bolton's bastard accosted Lady Donella Hornwood as she returned to Hornwood Castle from the harvest at Winterfell. He then proceeded to marry her pretty much on the spot. When Lord Wyman Manderley got wind of the transgression, he took control of Hornwood Castle to protect the lands from falling into the clutches of the Boltons. Roderick rode out to set things to rights. While Bran is thinking on this, though, Jojen jumps in and tells Bran it would be a good idea to get out of Winterfell soon.
Bran wonders why Jojen is so adamant. Meera reveals that Jojen has the greensight. He dreams of things that sometimes come to pass. Jojen contends that they always come true. Bran wants to know what Jojen dreams of, but Jojen wants to hear about Bran's dreams as payment. Bran is sensitive about his dreams, in denial even, and as Jojen presses Bran gets angry, which manifests itself as Summer getting angry with the Reeds. Meera has them hop into a tree just as Shaggy Dog arrives, teeth bared, to join in the mayhem.
The Reeds are stuck in the tree, as the wolves are refusing to comply with Bran's demands, but Hodor comes over, and he's able to chase the wolves away. Bran wants away from the Reeds, and has Hodor take him to Lewin. With the Maester, he learns more about greensight. The first men cut down the werewoods, as they believed the greenseers saw through the carved eyes. The greenseers were also said to have control over animals. Bran compares it to him and Rickon's dream of their father's death.
Lewin shows Bran his chain and points out the Valyrian steel link for the study of magic. He describes that if magic was a powerful force in the realm, it is no longer. The fall of Valyria was the last embers dying. Dragons, giants, the children of the forest are all gone. Lewin concludes that Jojen is full of it. Later, Bran talks to Meera again. He apologises for Summer, but argues that Jojen shouldn't have badgered him. In Bran's opinion, the dream crow lies, and so does Jojen. Meera suggests that perhaps Lewin is wrong. Bran gets upset again. Meera describes another of Jojen's dreams involving Maester Lewin. This dream also troubles Bran, but Lewin's logic and dispassion rob Bran of one of his hopes. If magic were real, maybe he could be whole again, or even more. So, one thing we did this week, I don't know if you realise this, but I intentionally left out the sort of like the content of the two dream discussions. I mean, because I thought that they were better in discussions, you know.
Yeah.
I just said that Bran and Jojen got into it over Bran's dreams, but they actually, there were very specific points that they raised, so we'll get into that in discussion. Similarly, the dream that Meera describes to Bran right at the end there is quite specific.
Makes sense to me.
a mosquito just flew past. So if you hear any random slaps on the audio, that's me attacking this mosquito. So one thing I'll say, it's great that Bran has some real friends. I mean, I think they treat him kindly, but not with pity. And it feels like there's kind of the antidote to what the Walders are like.
Yes, absolutely. He certainly doesn't seem to jive very well with the Walders fray, so it's good.
Yeah.
Now, the Reeds are both older than him. Meera's, 7 years? She's 16 and Bran's 9, so she's 7 years older.
One of the things I notice is that they're playing with him as they would anyone. Any kid, it's not like they're treating him differently because he's handicapped. He is.
Yeah.
He's out there with them, and they're having fun and games with him. And I think it's bringing him out of his shell. I mean, him getting dragged along by Summer was kind of like a sight that you could imagine he would be sensitive about letting people see if he wasn't close with them.
Good point. Yeah. You're right. The contrast between when the Walders were playing in the Godswood and pretty much played something that he couldn't be involved in. Versus here where they're including him.
Other than as a dungeon master, which he didn't actually enjoy that much.
Right, yes. Good point. Yeah, so one thing I read online about was, so Howland Reed has a moving castle. And there's a movie and a book called Howl's Moving Castle. Now, the movie came out in 2004. The book, however, came out in 1986. So this book, Clash of Kings, came out in 98, so it's possible that it could have been the influence for this Howland Reed having a moving castle thing by Martin.
I will say, Mackelly, that we've talked before about how we spend quite a lot of time preparing all this. Reading over the chapter, writing these notes, reading over the notes to make sure we understand them all. I think about probably north of 40% of my time is trying to interpret your gibberish
in the notes.
It's just a series of it's like R2-D2 wrote it. I mean, read this next sentence. Insight into GWW, BG, and pedantry. I'm like, what does any of this mean? I figured out Greywater Watch. Yep. GWW is Greywater Watch. But BG is background?
Yes, so we get some... What it means is we got some insight in this chapter into Greywater Watch. But we'd also provided some info on Greywater Watch in the background section of a previous chapter. And we've also discussed it in pedantry because she mentions ravens can't get to... He says, she says, we have no maester there. And Bran says, well, who handles your ravens? And she says, ravens can get to Greywater Watch no better than our foes can. And I had mentioned in pedantry, previous Bran chapter, that he says that his father used to send messages to Greywater Watch. And I questioned how he managed to do that if nobody can find it. So that's what that was in reference to.
Yes, okay. That's good. I brought it up for the laugh, really. Just that particular one tripped me up for several minutes. I was like, what is he talking about?
Well, what I have an issue with is when I have too much text, I can't digest it in my head fast enough while I'm also talking about current things. So
it's interesting because maybe we need our own notes, because I'm the opposite, you see. I get tripped up not by having lots of text to read, but by having to interpret.
That'll do that to you.
I still think, just coming back to that, I know it's a point we belaboured a little bit, but they must put people on the road. Because where they are, it's in the neck, right? Where there's basically just the King's Road is the only way through the neck.
Right.
So they must put spies on there looking for messengers, right? I guess.
That was my joke, is that they must have a P.O. box somewhere.
Right.
They must have someone manning the P.O. box somewhere on the King's Road.
But that person, of course, would know where the castle is. So all you have to do is get that one and torture them.
It's a good point, yeah. Maybe they do it like... like some organized crime situations do, where that person only knows how to get to the next leg.
The next person, right, right. No, that makes perfect sense. I was thinking the same thing, actually. Yeah. You could even, that person could actually just have like a little raven's sort of like a wooden structure for ravens, just sitting
Right.
there, and that's where you send the ravens.
Yes.
To there, and from there they pass it on by word of mouth through this chain gang of I only know where the next guy is.
Right. That's how they do it. It's got to be. But yeah, like I said, Meera mentions they have no maester at Greywater Watch. They have no knights, no master at arms, which is very different from the rest of the realm, except for maybe in the Mountains of the Moon, some of the mountain clans, maybe in the Mountains of the Moon and the Northern Mountain clans. And she mentioned that
anyone who's within the sort of like the confines of the social structure of Westeros has a maester.
Yes.
I mean, the clans, sure, they don't, but they're not really within the social structure of the place.
Exactly.
So it is unique, basically. I will say, actually, just sort of like, just presaging a little bit of what we're going to talk about, your mention of the fact that they don't have a maester goes to sort of like the heart of your interpretation of this whole chapter. Your interpretation of this whole chapter is that the what's holding Bran back is his training, is his knowledge, is his learning from Maester Lewin.
Yes, right.
That because Jojen and Meera don't have maesters, they have a more open mind to certain things. And I have to say, I didn't think about that until your notes, until you started to write your notes. I was like, that is actually what George Martin was getting at. That is precisely what he was getting at. Because when we get to the specific bit, I'll mention what I thought he meant.
Oh, okay.
But I defer to you. I think you were right on this.
I'm heartened that you were able to translate my gibberish well enough to pick up on the sentiment of these notes.
I do. I can often infer the sentiment. It's just the specifics are often lost on me. So the Reeds invite Bran to visit Greywater Watch, and Bran thinks, it'd be nice to do that one day, but they mean right here, right now.
Right, let's go.
Let's go. And Jojen, who later, in a few minutes in the chapter, we discover has greensight, says it would be good if you left Winterfell sooner rather than later. And it's like, okay, so what do you know? What is it you've seen?
Yes, yeah, and Bran asks what's going to happen, and he says, let's talk about your dreams first. Then
right. Yeah.
But,
see, and that's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I forgot. I mean, I remember that conversation was had, but I forgot that Bran never got the other side of the bargain, because Bran balks at sharing his dream. He doesn't get the other side of the bargain, so we never do learn what Jojen knew, what Jojen knows.
Right, only the dream about the crow or the wolf, winged wolf in chains, which I guess we'll get to in a minute.
But the winged, yes, the dream that he does describe to Bran is not a reason to get out of Winterfell necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Right. It wouldn't be, except for, I guess, unless you're doing the crow's bidding, and the crow says, "I need those chains broken so that he can open his third eye."
Yeah, but the other thing that you mentioned was that we know the Ironborn are coming. We know that the Ironborn have their sights on the north. And so maybe that's what Jojen has seen. An attack on Winterfell, it would be better if Bran was not here for.
Yes, exactly.
But I do think, Bran knows that Maester Lewin would say no. He thinks there's a chance Sir Roderick would say yes, but he's not around to say yes. But it is pretty unlikely, because there always has to be a Stark in Winterfell. That's practically their words. If winter was not coming, there would always have to be a Stark in Winterfell, and that would only and Bran is the last Stark in Winterfell. Oh wait, hang on.
Oh,
Rickon would then really be the last Stark in Winterfell. So.
Could you imagine 4-year-old Rickon being the Stark in Winterfell, the prince?
Shaggy dog just prowling around everywhere, biting whatever he sees.
Oh man. Yeah. So it does seem unlikely. I mean, that you'd think the only way there wouldn't be a Stark in Winterfell is if there was some serious crisis occurred.
Right.
But we'll get into Jojen's green dream in a moment. But first, it's kind of Bran's thought process when he's thinking about, I'd like to do that. I'd like to go to Greywater Watch, but I can't because Maester Lewin's going to say no, and I can't ask Sir Roderick, who might possibly say yes, because Sir Roderick is away. And then he thinks quickly about what Sir Roderick is up to. And what he's done is he's rode east toward Hornwood Dreadfort area, because, like we said in the summary, Roose Bolton's bastard, has kidnapped and married Donella Hornwood. Now, we get a lot of names and a lot of people doing a lot of things in this book, and if it's your first time through, you might be like, who are these people again, and what are they doing? So just a...
Or you're me.
Just a quick recap on what's happening here. So, Donella Hornwood was the newly widowed wife of Hallis Hornwood, who died in the battle on the Green Fork, and her son Darren was killed at the Whispering Wood. So, we now have no male heir in Hornwood, and in a few Bran chapters ago, we saw every lord who was single throw their hat in the ring as her suitor, and those who were married offered sons and other alternatives to get their grips into the now very consumable Hornwood lands. And of course, Wyman Manderley offered either himself or a son. Either way, either one is fine. And another thing that plays into how all this worked out the way it did is that Donella came to Winterfell for the feast with only 6 men-at-arms, not a big retinue of knights or anything, just 6 men-at-arms. So you could see why they'd be easily overtaken by the Bolton men.
She herself reported that she was troubled by what Roose Bolton's bastard was doing. We know what this kid's given name is, don't we? But it hasn't been mentioned in the book yet. So it's
correct.
We keep referring to him as Roose Bolton's bastard. But
yes,
he does
checked that. I did a search in my ebook, and yes, there's been no mention of his first name yet. So that's why I just keep calling him that, because
he's been amassing men at Dreadfort, and she doesn't like the Boltons. She's a little bit afraid of them, and Donella asked him why he was amassing men, and he said that Boltons don't answer to women, so this kind of reaffirmed that he was not someone she wanted to have truck with, and now she's married to him, luckily for her. She also claimed that he, the bastard, and his servant Reek hunt together and not for deer. So she won't be very happy with the situation she finds herself in, I think we can safely assume. I don't think she would have been happy to marry anyone, but I think of all of the suitors, she would be least pleased to be married to this one.
Yes, I think you're right on that assumption. She mentioned when she first got to Winterfell that Roose Bolton's son, or bastard son, she said that he looks hungrily at her lands now that her husband and son are both gone.
To be fair, all the Lords of the North are looking hungrily at her land.
He's not alone.
It seems Roose Bolton's bastard is the one who's most sinister about it.
Yes. Now, of course, the Hornwoods and the Boltons are neighbors, so assuming the Hornwood lands would significantly increase the Bolton holdings, just about double them, really. And that, of course, would certainly rankle Wyman Manderley, as their lands would be more of a threat to his domain, which is the largest domain out east.
So Wyman's rationale, if you want to defend Wyman, is that the Hornwood lands are basically within the greater Manderley lands. They actually fit more nicely into that. They sit on the northwest edge. The Hornwood's lands sit on the northwest edge of Sheep's Head Hills, which are basically within the Manderley's domain. So, and Donella was a Manderley by birth. She's a cousin to Wyman. So she doesn't want to marry anyone, but she probably would be happier marrying back into her own family. Although she might be, but she says she's past childbearing age anyway, doesn't she? So it's
yes, right. Yeah.
So it's not a great time for Roderick to leave, because we know that the Ironborn are planning to come. So another problem for the North here.
Yes, the Balon mentioned that they expect to lay siege to Winterfell. So now the Castellan of Winterfell is on the wrong side of the kingdom from where the Ironborn will be attacking, and that could be especially problematic if he doesn't get back in time to prepare the castle for a siege. And it's also problematic because we know that they plan to hit Deepwood Motte, the Glover's castle, which is on the western side. That's where Asha's force is going to attack first, as well as Moat Cailin. So he he couldn't be in a much worse position to get news quickly of either of those two events taking place.
I do wonder though. Winterfell is pretty large, and the one thing that Ironborn don't have is a lot of men. It would be hard to make a encircling siege for them to make an encircling siege of Winterfell that couldn't be penetrated.
Yeah,
it feels like Sir Roderick could slip back into Winterfell and sort of, if they can hold out without him.
Yeah. That's so. That goes along with my point of the Ironborn just don't have enough men to take over the North like they plan to do. Now, this is a little bit just conspiracy theory, basically, but
which as you see, I've added a note to contend your conspiracy theory.
Oh, okay.
So you go ahead, and then I will knock down your house of cards.
Right. So we've been critical of Roose Bolton for needlessly sending those foot soldiers into battle with Tywin's army at the battle on the Green Fork, and we were like, that was not necessary. Your job there was to keep the Lannister forces moving north and keep them away from the crossing of the Green Fork down by the inn at the crossroads. And we were like, why would you just sacrifice all those men? And I thought about what his bastard son has done here and the needlessness of that particular sacrificing of men. And I wondered if there might have been some possible intention there. Maybe his intention was to kill off a lot of the competition, including Hallis Hornwood, in an attempt to increase his power and position in the North, basically, is my conspiracy theory here.
But actually, there's a second part to it. So
there
talk
is,
about that too.
It's possible.
I want to bring it all down. I want you to build up the whole edifice before I wrecking ball it.
My other thought was possibly he told his son that when word comes of Hallis Hornwood's death, to make a move on his lands. Now, he couldn't have known that Darren Hornwood would die because he wasn't in his group. Darren was in Rob's group, but all right. Okay. I'm already making up holes in my own theory here.
Yeah. So I question this just sort of like on a fundamental level. I mean, first of all, I don't think it's Roose Bolton's plan. I think it's Robb Stark's plan that Roose Bolton is following. Now, I think that tactically, he could have harried Tywin's army and then backed off, rather than engaging them in battle. But hey, if the plot of land that they were fighting on was sufficiently narrow that Tywin's larger force wasn't overwhelming to him. I mean, it was like a 10-1 disadvantage, but the width of the land was such that they were basically able to fill their front. So basically, you're going to lose, but you're also going to take as big a chunk out of that army as you possibly could with your force. So he just decided, let's get this over with in one fell swoop. It was Robb's plan, not Roose Bolton's. But the other thing I would say is that Roose Bolton has, although he's scary, there's no question about it, he scares Catelyn, he scares me, he's been loyal to a foe. And this move you're describing is a significantly disloyal act at a very sensitive moment. My interpretation of all this is that the bastard son has become drunk on power, having been left in charge. I mean, he is an illegitimate child. He has no expectations of inheriting, or had no expectations of inheriting the Bolton lands. But now he's been left in charge, and he's got drunk on the power, and is just a loose cannon doing whatever he wants. He hunts humans, apparently.
At least not just deer.
Not just deer. I mean, it doesn't say what it is, but I mean, it seems like it's humans that he hunts.
It does. It's definitely inferred.
Now, I will say that marrying Danella Hornwood is a surprisingly strategic move of someone who's just a loose cannon drunk on power. So that does give some credence to what you're saying. But
yeah. We don't know Roose well enough yet to know what if he would be up for something like what I'm proposing. But you're right. So far, we don't have any reason to doubt him. So
yeah. One thing, Roose is not married at the moment, is he?
No, not at the moment.
Right. So if this was Roose's plan, he might want himself to marry Danella Hornwood rather than his son.
True. Yes. good point. Although,
So,
if he... So you're thinking legitimately, like get permission from Rob, not pull the move like what his son just did.
right.
Yeah.
He's of an age with her. Their lands are next to each other. It's perfectly reasonable pitch. But if the bastard becomes legitimized and is the heir to the Bolton lands, he needs to marry someone of childbearing age.
Good point. The line will end quickly otherwise.
Right. So anyway, back to the Weirwoods, and Meera tells Bran that her brother has the greensight, that he dreams things that haven't happened, but sometimes they do. And there's an interesting moment here when Jojen bridles, and he said, "There is no sometimes."
Yes.
And a look passes between them, and there's a very interesting word choice here, I think, because he says that the look passes between them. Jojen is sad, and Meera is defiant. But my thinking is, if I'm someone who has dreams that I think always come true, and someone says they sometimes come true, the look I would have would be the defiant look.
Yes.
That Jojen would be the defiant one, and Meera would be the sad one. You know, Meera's sad either for the fact that her brother is utterly delusional, or sad for the fact that she knows some horrible dreams he's had that might come true because he's so convinced they all come true.
Right.
But it's the other way around. It's her being defiant and him being sad.
Yes, I hadn't thought about that word choice, but yeah, that's a solid point. Which even further ties this interaction back to what I propose here, that it's possibly related to his "this is not the day I die" mantra.
You are absolutely right. That's why she's defiant, I think, because I think he says that line quite often. She reacts to that line like she's heard it before. He's dreamt of his death and therefore feels himself invulnerable to anything. Right. And that gets her annoyed, and she obviously pulls him out of danger over and over again because he doesn't bother to get himself out of danger. And that's where her defiance is coming from. Yeah. Not today, because you're going to grab me by the scruff of the neck and pull me out of the way of that oncoming bus. You know?
Yeah, I think she's holding out hope that maybe this dream is wrong, and this is
the dream of his death.
The dream of his death will be wrong.
We don't know what that is. I mean, it could be like, 94 years old in bed with two beautiful young ladies, Well,
one thing's for sure is his dream of his death must include Meera, and they must have all their limbs. There must be 2 sets of arms and 2 sets of legs, because twice now he's been unafraid of a snarling direwolf snapping at him and Meera, and be like, "No, don't worry, there's nothing to fear here." So clearly he's seen in his death that they all have their arms and legs and are together.
That would be funny if it cuts to the dream of his death and he's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Simon was acting out a heart attack there while counting his fingers and toes.
Yes. I forget we're not on video all the time now. Now we've done it once.
Now that we've done it once, it just feels like old hat. But, thinking about something that Bran mentions that old Nan thinks about him, he mentions that Jojen is so somber that Nan calls him little grandfather. And if you take it that we're correct and that he has dreamed his death and has knows the way and timing of his death, that would certainly cause someone to be more solemn in nature.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why kids are so spirited and optimistic is they for the most part don't fully grasp that they will die. It's it's not until you reach a certain age that you kind of grapple with your mortality and accept that, oh yeah, right, we all die, including me.
Oh,
so
not ready for this, Mackelly.
I know, it's not even 9:30.
my optimistic nature, I'm so spirited now. I'm starting to think about the icy fingers.
But anyway, yeah. So I was just thinking about why he is as somber as he is, and I guess if you had not even just this knowledge, he's clearly seen other sad, traumatic things, like possibly
yeah.
something that might happen to
his
Bran.
family's death. Yeah, Bran.
Right.
Yeah, all of these things. Yeah.
So that would certainly cause you to be a little somber and solemn in nature.
Yeah.
But one thing they didn't do was Martin didn't hide the foreshadowing of this greensight very deeply, because in the introduction to him back at the feast in the Great Hall, it's mentioned that he's dressed all in green from his boots all the way up, all in green, including his eyes. His eyes are like moss-colored green. Now, the only thing that's not green on him is his teeth, which is what the Walters said he would have green because he eats frogs.
Right.
So,
right.
He certainly gave us a little nugget that there might be something green involved with Jojen.
Well, when you feel you've got the green side, you want to label, wear it like a superpower.
I guess so.
So Jojen and Bran have this back and forth, and in it, Jojen describes one of the dreams that he's had. Not the dream he promises to share with Bran if Bran will describe his own dreams, but a dream that he's had about Bran. And the dream basically consists of a winged wolf bound to the earth by grey stone chains. There's a crow that can't peck through the chains. Obviously the winged wolf feels like Bran. Bran's been told to fly on multiple occasions.
Right.
He is obviously a wolf child in some ways. And he is obviously pinned to the ground by chains, obviously metaphorical, but also to a certain extent literal, because he can't walk anymore. He is...
Right. He's confined to Winterfell, which is a stone castle.
Right. And the crow not able to peck through the chains is kind of like the crow's leading him in the dreams, but can't do it for him. He has to break these chains himself.
Right. Yes. He's trying, in the state the chains are just too strong. And this is where we get to what we were discussing earlier. That my interpretation of the chapter was that his instruction and influence from Lewin, grounding him in facts and accepted knowledge, is one of the things that is holding him down, holding him back from flying and opening that third eye.
Yeah.
And of course, as your green dream suggested, the Citadel doesn't want the idea of magic gaining favor, possibly, because they want to control the thoughts and prevailing ideas in the kingdoms.
I will say, though, that Lewin, when Lewin's describing his Valyrian link of his chain, he clearly gave it his best shot. It's not like he went into the study of magic to disprove magic. He went into the study of magic to try to learn magic, and failed as everyone has before.
Yes.
Because they feel that magic is dead. So that's to their credit, if they're being honest about it. Or, maybe it's not even dishonesty. Maybe it is they really are trying and they really are failing because other aspects of their learning are shackling them from opening up their own third eye,
Solid point. Yeah. Yeah, him discounting magic because he wasn't able to do it, or anyone he knew wasn't able to do it, doesn't allow for the fact that there might be people who have the special ability to do it.
Right.
So,
and that would fly in the face of what the Maesters believe, because the Maesters, being men of science, believe that you can learn everything.
Right.
Yeah. Talent is useful, but hard work and learning are all that's needed to do anything.
Yeah.
And obviously, if certain people are magic, that flies in the face of that principle.
Right. So one of the things so when Jojen tells Bran about the crow pecking at the chains of the winged wolf, he says, "Did the crow have 3 eyes?" And I think that was in order to try and get to verify Jojen's story, but it was a bit of a leading question. I think the better question would have been, describe the crow.
Yeah. Or, did the crow have 4 eyes? No, Bran. The crow had 3 eyes.
Yeah. He needs a little work on his verifying questions there.
Courtroom Bran. Objection, leading.
So the crow came to Jojen, he says, when he almost died of graywater fever, which I tried to look up to see if there was any useful background info on that, but there's not. This is
you live in a swamp.
Reference.
You're going to get fevers. Let's
right.
be honest. You live in a swamp, and there's no such thing as antibiotics. Right. Expect fever,
especially from gray water.
Exactly.
It doesn't sound very healthy to consume in general. But so the crow came to Jojen when he almost died of graywater fever as a child, and Bran mentions the crow came to me after my fall. So, now we've only got 2 instances here, but in both instances, whatever force there is behind the three-eyed crow reached out to struggling kids through their dreams when the kid had suffered a traumatic event. So, at the moment, that's just anecdotal coincidence, but maybe there is something going on there.
But also highborn children as well.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So perhaps it picks and chooses its targets. Or perhaps the lowborn children who have near-death experiences and are saved by the third-eye crow, no one listens to their dreams because they have to get back in the fields and pull the plough. Stop your blubbing.
Could be that too. That's part of the anecdotal thing. But you remember in Bran 3 that of A Game of Thrones, the dream that he had when Bran looked to the north and saw the heart of winter, and the crow said, "Now you see why you must survive." Now Jojen's saying the crow is north of the wall, so maybe he's assembling an army of dreamers to fight the others.
The crow is
possibly
right. I wasn't sure if you meant Jojen.
Oh no, yeah, the crow is. Yeah,
right.
That's my possible inference from that is, or it could be a trap. Leading these boys north of the wall under false pretenses. That could be something going on there too.
Yeah. Because in that same chapter, Bran saw the bones of thousands of other dreamers before him impaled on the rocks below.
Right. And now we start to see what that image may have meant. That Bran's not the first with green dreams and crow dreams. That maybe these thousands of dreamers before that are on the rocks are the ones that couldn't fly, the ones that weren't able to fly and have green dreams like Jojen, or what the crow's hoping Bran will have here. Yeah.
So Bran, of course, was hurt and disillusioned when he woke up still broken, unable to fly. But perhaps that's because Bran is interpreting the dream literally, and if he could see the dream less through Maester Lewin's eyes, he might see that the chains are metaphorical and he could break them in other ways.
Right, which could go back to being the product of his environment.
Exactly.
He is heavily influenced by a man who takes the literal interpretation of life. He's a man of science, and so Bran took that literally.
Yeah.
I should have been able to fly, and I can't.
Right. So Jojen says that he told his father, Howland Reed, of the winged wolf dream, and Reed Sr. immediately sent the children to Winterfell. So he obviously puts enough stock in Jojen's dreams to take them seriously. That he wasn't just sending them to give fealty to the new Prince of the North. He wanted to warn Bran about what he'd seen, or...
Right. Yeah. He put enough stock into his son's green dream to pack his kids up and ship them to Winterfell.
Yeah, and that goes, again, I think, backs up what you're saying about the presence or absence of a maester. Without a maester here might have said, Howland, it's just a dream. He's a kid,
Right.
Sure, send them. Don't send them to describe his dreams. Nobody cares about other people's dreams. Let me tell you.
Oh man, I wish Molly would learn that lesson. The amount of times I have to sit through a retelling of one of her dreams, I'm like, whew. Yes, you're right. The indulgence of the green dreams from the primary adult in his life, without the balance from the maester's view, would definitely have these kids leaning in the direction of spiritual, magical view of the world, because there's no scientific balance on the other side that you might get from a maester. But by the way, there's a lot of talk of Jojen and Meera's father, Howland, but no mention of their mother. Their mother's name is Jayana, Jyana, Jayana, I guess. But there's really not a lot of info about her other than that she's also from the neck. She's a Crannog woman, I guess.
Right. So Jojen tells Bran to open his eyes. Bran says his eyes are open. Jojen says only 2 of them are, and Crow gave you the 3rd eye, and we all know that really did happen in the dream. So Jojen can definitely see into Bran's dreams. There's no doubt about it, despite Bran leading him with the questions. And also, to a certain extent, it clears up the mystery of what the 3rd eye might do. Jojen said that you can see to the person's heart, you can see the future and the past, you can see the far-off lands if you're able to open that 3rd eye. But we're not quite sure if Jojen has that ability. Obviously, he has some of that ability because he can see the future.
Yes. And Bran makes a comment, or Bran has a thought about Jojen. He says, when Jojen looks at you, it's like he's seeing something else, like something beyond just looking at you. We don't know if he's got the full capabilities of like green seer type level capabilities, but it does seem like he certainly has some levels of these abilities. Now remember, the crow had been trying to peck a 3rd eye in Bran's head ever since the dream when he finally woke from his coma, the one where he was falling and saw the saw in all various directions and saw the dreamers below him. But he finally did so in the dream after Clay Serwyn mentioned Jaime, when all the people were arriving, all the other Lords of the North were arriving for the harvest feast. So Clay Serwyn mentioned Jaime just kind of in passing, and Bran got really freaked out about the whole thing. And then that night he dreamed in his dream, the crow pecked out both of his eyes and then pecked a 3rd eye into his forehead. And it was from that 3rd eye that Bran saw Golden Man say, "The things I do for love," and then pushed him out into the open air. And
Bran hasn't told anyone about remembering Jaime in the dream because he thinks that it might not be a true memory. He thinks it could just be a dream. He's not convinced all his dreams are true in the same way that Jojen is. And it's mature to consider that, that it might not be a real memory. And we read the book. We know who pushed him out. But
Bran's not been so fortunate. Yeah, it's very possible because the Lannisters were in Winterfell when Bran fell, and his whole life changed during the arrival of the Lannisters. His father went south, and then everything figuratively went south from there on. And it could have been his mind combining these 2 life-changing events, the arrival of the Lannisters and him falling and everything falling apart in his life. But
you feel like if he discussed this with Lewin would say, well, now it does make sense. You never fell from the walls, ever. And then you did the day that the Lannisters were here and they were the only 2 people around because everyone else was out on a hunt. Feels like that might be true.
Possibly. Kat certainly jumped to that conclusion.
Yeah.
When she woke up from her, after she defended Bran when the cat's paw tried to come and kill him with that Valyrian steel dagger, she woke up and thought, had to have been Jaime that was involved because they weren't on that hunt with everyone else.
So Bran gets increasingly upset and perturbed by this conversation with Jojen, especially when Jojen says, hey, you dreamed you were Summer the night of the Harvest Feast, and I felt you when I touched Summer, and then you fell, and asks him if he fell does he fall every night in his dreams? And this begins to strike a chord. Of course, Bran can't move, but Summer starts to close in on the 2 reeds because Bran's emotions are expressed through the wolf, exactly as Jojen is accusing him of.
So, you're doing it right now.
Right this second.
Yeah, it struck me as a little surprising that, we know that the story that Jojen is telling about the encounter in the Godswood was true. We we read about it. Bran dreamt about it. So I'm surprised it isn't resonating more with Bran. I kind of expected a 9-year-old to be less skeptical and more accepting of something like that.
This is how I feel about this whole thing as well. It seems strange. And in actual fact, when we get to the comparison with the TV show, this conversation is much more rational in the TV show.
Oh, okay.
Bran's interested in what Jojen's got to say, and Jojen's demonstrated that he's got insight into Bran's dream. I would think that you would take the opportunity to discuss it.
Yeah. And it's not like he's never talked to anyone before about his wolf dreams. He's mentioned it to Lewin and Osha back in Bran 1 of A Clash of Kings. He's mentioned that he has these wolf dreams. And he seems very accepting and open to Osha's claims of magical things north of the wall. So, it just seemed like he'd be more...
He's 9 years old. He's 9 years old. I haven't been 9 for 20-something years now.
That's right, 20-something years. Yeah, I wondered if it was maybe the way they approached it. Like how Jojen was like, well, yeah, I'll tell you what bad is going to happen, but first you need to open up to me and tell me everything about your wolf dreams. But
initially he seems involved in that. He seems engaged in it. And it's only when Jojen really presses him on... it's really when Jojen presses him on the inhabiting summer. That's when he starts to get really sensitive.
True. Yes.
So
right,
maybe that's a part of it that he doesn't want to come out. So... as we said, Jojen says today's not going to be the day I die, but Meera says, "Get up that tree,"
It's not going to be the day you die because I'm going to save your ass.
Right, exactly. For the 28th time. Yeah.
So after the Reeds get treed and Bran calls for Hodor to get the wolves to leave them alone, the Reeds kind of go off. Guess they've had enough of this interaction for the day, and so Bran's kind of feeling a little bit guilty about that whole thing. He keeps thinking, well, it wasn't me, it was Summer. I didn't do it, but yet he's feeling guilty about it because I guess deep down he must know that he had some cause of it, and so he wants to go see Maester Lewin because Maester Lewin is one of his confidants, and he gets there and Maester Lewin is they're talking about Jojen's green dreams, and we get a lot of detail about about Children of the Forest and green seers and werewoods and all their connection, which we've discussed in the past, so there's really not a whole lot of new information we gain there. But they do start talking about Maester Lewin's chain, and Maester Lewin's chain is a kind of a tight choker, which he has to kind of slide around his neck, which is in very different compared to Grand Maester Pycelle's chains.
I think within the confines of Game of Thrones, you should always say stark contrast.
I started to, but I stopped myself. Grand Maester Pycelle's chains were described back in Ned 4 of A Game of Thrones as 24 chains that hang from his neck down to his breast, and they were gem-studded as well, so...
I'm picturing Mr. T at this point.
Yes, he's the Mr. T of Maesters, I guess. So I thought that was an interesting difference there, the fact that Lewin just has enough links to get around his neck. I guess that's how you determine when you're ready to take your Maester's vow. Once you get that link that connects around your neck, Lewin had to breathe in really hard.
Am I ready to be a Maester? You got one choice: get another link or diet.
Lose a few pounds, you'll become a Maester.
So after Bran leaves Lewin, he sees Meera again, and she tells him about Jojen's second dream. So the second dream is Bran is sitting at supper, and Lewin, rather than the servants, bring him the food. They bring to Bran the best cut, the most savoury, rare-looking cut, which smells delicious. But to the Frey boys, Lewin serves old grey dead meat. But they like their supper better than Bran does. So this is the moment where I started to think that your whole idea here, that it's the embracing of science prevents you from understanding and embracing magic, is the true meaning of this whole chapter, because I think that's what this is saying. This is saying that Lewin, what he serves up to the phrase is just a sort of like a formal education, and it's, it gets them through. They learn their numbers, they learn how to write, they learn the things that you need. Lewin takes more time with Bran and actually sort of like really engages Bran with discussions, and they have sort of like a more in-depth conversations about his education. But it still leaves Bran wanting, because Bran isn't satisfied. Bran, in some ways, feels there's more to the world.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. It's a very deep interpretation of this dream. I was figuring it might be an event that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay.
But I like your it could be both, the symbolism could be what you explained, and the reality could be maybe it's an event that hasn't happened yet, because there's nothing in this dream that like fits with something that's already happened.
Right.
Because he says, Bran says, I don't know what that means, basically. And Meera says, Jojen says, you will, and when you do, come talk to us again.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway.
Dinner comes that night, and it's pigeon pie for everybody. Everyone seems to get the same cut, so Bran discounts the dream because it isn't literally coming true there and then.
He's like, whew, goodness. Yeah. Maester Lewin must be right then.
Exactly, and that makes him think Maester Lewin's right. Nothing bad is going to happen at Winterfell. So,
and is that line right there, when he thinks nothing bad is going to happen, nothing bad is coming to Winterfell, Maester Lewin has the right of it. That was when I thought, okay, that's a possible reason for why he was so resistant to believe Jojen and so quick to believe Osha about other magical things north of the Wall, because a part of him was fearing that Jojen is right and something bad is coming to Winterfell, which we know the Ironborn at least plan on coming, attacking Winterfell. And so he was, from that very onset of hearing that information, was hesitant to want to believe that anything else Jojen said was true.
It's a very good point. All right, do you got some background for us?
I have a little bit of background. Background was tricky in this chapter because, like I said, we've already talked about most of the things that were mentioned regarding
eventually we'll have covered the whole of
World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood. So what I focused a little bit on the discussion of Lewin's Maester's chain. And so a Maester's chain can be made of links from every metal known to man. And once they've forged their chain, Maesters never take it off, even when sleeping. Although the description of Grand Maester Pycelle when Tyrion caught him in bed with the serving girl made no mention of his copious chains. So I guess that's the least of the transgressions against his vow that he was making at that particular time. And it's also possible for the Citadel to strip a Maester of his chains. And if they knew what Pycelle was up to, they may have just considered doing so.
Mm-hmm.
But according to George Martin, Maesters can earn multiple links for the same subject, which signifies a Maester's expertise in that subject. Okay, so here's a list of known link metals and what they stand for. We don't necessarily know if this is a complete list, but here's the ones that have been referenced so far in the story. So as we learned in this chapter, black iron is for ravenry. Valyrian steel, as again we learned in this chapter, is for the higher mysteries. And we also, both in this chapter and I mentioned it in the Tyrion 4 episode, yellow gold is for math and economics, and silver is for medicine and healing. Platinum, Tyrion noticed that Pycelle had a lot of platinum, had a lot of the more expensive links in his chains. We don't know what that's for, but it exists. We know because Tyrion saw it. Bronze is a bit of a mystery because there's a lot of references that don't exactly line up with one another. Bronze is either for astronomy, astrology, or possibly history. There's references that could indicate any of that. However, in A Feast for Crows appendix, it mentions that copper is for history. So I don't think bronze is for history. I'm guessing it's an astronomy astrology thing.
You know, my wife frequently calls my hobby astrology just to annoy me.
It's astronomy.
Exactly.
Iron is for Warcraft, which I guess makes some level of sense. Then there are several that we don't know anything about, such as brass, electrum, lead, pewter, red gold, steel, and tin have all been mentioned, but not what they're signify a knowledge of.
I would think that tin is quite a soft metal, right? I think tin would give you a little bit of... So maybe tin is for easy breathing, you know?
True. You put that one right under your windpipe there.
Exactly.
So more flexible.
In comparison with the television show, the Reeds don't show up in the TV show for quite a long time. So they're like where we basically are in the TV show, the Reeds aren't there. But when they do show up, Jojen does question Bran about his dreams, but the conversation is much more mature and calm. Bran actually picks Jojen's brain for intel about his dream, which is sort of like more like what you'd hope would have happened here. But the scene with Maester Lewin is very much captured. Lewin wakes Bran up and one morning, and Bran describes his dream, and they talk about dreams and how if they mean anything. But of course, it's not presaged by any kind of conversation about Jojen Reed because he hasn't met him yet.
Right.
Rather, Bran's describing his wolf dreams to Lewin, and Bran says that Bran talks about the fact that his dream he really feels like he is Summer, and Bran says that old Nan told stories of people who could live inside of animals. Lewin dismisses them as stories, says, hey, for every dream that you've had that seems real, you've had 1,000 that never came true. So, it's just coincidence. To pedantry, you got some pedantry?
I just discovered, is that yours or mine? I think that's
you
your
wrote
wording.
You wrote it. Yeah.
Huh. You didn't write that. I didn't remember writing anything down, but I had the same thought. I added the last little bit to it. Oh, okay.
You were the one who noticed the pedantry.
It was the unobtainium that I was like, I didn't write that, so I thought maybe you wrote it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the enrollment is at the Citadel, what enrollment numbers are like, but Lewin says he got no more efforts regarding having success with magic than the 1,000 boys before him and 1,000 boys since. And I don't think the math works unless there are way more students.
Unless the Citadel grows exponentially, a la coronavirus,
Right. We don't exactly know how old Maester Lewin is, nor do we know how old he was when he took his Maester's vow and got his chain, or at least got his Valyrian steel link. Maybe that was the first thing he did when he got there. Yeah, is get his Valyrian steel link, and this has given him more years.
Honestly, if I was in Maester 101 at the Citadel, I would say, first of all, go straight for the Valyrian steel. A, it's expensive. B, you can't fail that class. They expect you not to do anything.
No one can pass that class.
Exactly. So... You just get it automatically.
Right, you got one.
Tried to raise the dead, completely failed. Here's your link.
That's good stuff, yeah. Yeah, even if Maester Lewin was 60 and he got his chain, he got that link at 20, which is pretty early for most maesters. Even those 40 years, it would have to have an enrollment of 2,500 students a year to get to 1,000. Oh, the reason why is because we didn't mention this. We've been talking about this, but we haven't mentioned what the issue is. He says only 1 in 100 students take the Valyrian steel training course, I guess you'd call it, to learn about magic or higher learning type things. So you would need like 2,500 students every year
to get 1,000 in the Valyrian steel class. Yeah,
yes, in the time that
I take your point. I will say I think you're being unbelievably pedantic because he just said 1,000 boys before me and 1,000 boys since. He didn't mean I've counted them all.
It's been exactly 1,000 boys.
Right. And plus,
Yes.
I don't think he's only limiting it to maesters either. If you think about it, two little boys who get together and try to make a love potion to get the pretty girl to fall in love with them. You know, they're also trying their hand at magic, you know.
Yes, I was intentionally being very pedantic there.
You know, in my first year at university, what you would call freshman year, me and my housemates decided to do some experiments on extrasensory perception.
Oh, okay.
And we tried to do it by calling coin tosses. That was our test, was calling coin toss. So the coin was tossed, you had to call it. And we decided we would just do it 12 times, 12 coin tosses, and see how many we could get right. And we got, would you believe, 12 out of 12, and we never did any more tests. We said, that's it. We called it 12 times in a row. The odds are 4,000 to 1 against doing
Wow.
That. And we
so
were like,
you guys
we've proved it! And we went to the pub.
You've got the green sight.
Exactly. So I think we were one of the 1,000.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, I this was mostly, of course, I was just joking about all that, but I did find it funny that I was like, 1,000 since? How old is this guy?
News and notes.
Well,
this one is fascinating. This is fascinating. I gotta say.
I came across this study, and I came across it a week or so ago, and I've been holding it for this episode because it fits very well with this episode. So a recent study was done at Duke University and published in a journal called Current Biology that compared dogs and wolves in regards to being pets. It found, shockingly, that dogs make better pets than wolves. Who could have seen that coming? The primary reason is that dogs pick up cues from humans that wolves just don't seem to. Even wolves who have been hand-reared from pups by humans don't seem to put much nostalgic stock into those said humans. The quote from one of the researchers said, "We find that dog puppies are more attracted to humans, read human gestures more skillfully, and make more eye contact with humans than wolf puppies do." And the reason is believed to be that through the centuries of domestication, dogs develop the ability to communicate with humans from an early age, to infer what we're thinking and feeling, basically. And according to the researchers, that's something even our closest animal relatives, the chimpanzee, can't do. And the study was the largest quantitative comparison ever done regarding the cognition of wolves and dogs.
Right, because although we're closer to chimpanzees genetically, we've never coexisted with them the way we coexist with dogs. So the chimpanzees haven't learned over generations to understand our feelings, but the dogs have.
Sure. Yeah, I thought that study, I came across it and I was like, this fits really well with this chapter coming up.
Yeah. Okay, we got a review on Apple Podcasts by John Pack NW. The best kind of podcast for a book series. I could and do echo all the other 5-star reviews on here, but I urge any diehard or casual A Song of Ice and Fire fan to give this podcast a try. Simon and Mackelly managed to discuss chapters thoughtfully while keeping it casual and approachable. Even Pedantry Corner, a segment that could have been obnoxious, is done in such a humorous, affectionate way that it's one of my favourite parts of every episode. Highly recommended for fans and first-time readers. I guess now I think about it, Pedantry Corner could come across as obnoxious, but it was always intended to be fun. So
yes,
thank you, John Pack NW. That's a nice one.
Yes, thank you, John. That was a fantastic review. When I read it, it brought a smile to my face. Yeah, I was very happy to see it. And yes, I was completely joking about the 1,000 boys since.
I mean, you are allowed to be pedantic in Pedantry Corner. I mean, that's the point, you know.
Yes.
If not there, then where? You know? All right, let's draw this to a conclusion. I think the TV show has the right of it. Instead of fighting Jojen, Bran should be learning from him, should be leaning on him. Now, as I said, that scene is pushed quite a bit later in the whole narrative arc, and Bran is a little bit older when he talks to Jojen, so he perhaps has matured a little bit by that point.
Sure, yeah.
Water has passed under the bridge.
Right. We do know that Jojen's right about the Bran summer dream in the Godswood, and we know the Ironborn are supposedly heading toward Winterfell here, so he does seem to have at least he's on to something here.
Yeah.
So, should Bran and Rickon flee and protect the Stark line, or do they remain as the Stark or Starks in Winterfell? That's the age-old question, I guess.
I have to say, I do think Winterfell is defensible against the Ironborn, but we'll see. I mean, with winter coming, it's a tough nut to crack, Winterfell.
Yes, you're right.
For a group that just lacks the one thing you really need to to besiege a castle, which is numbers. You need numbers to make that siege watertight. We'll see.
How long into the winter before the Ironborn are just like, you know what do we need this for anyway?
Right. It's not worth it. So will Bran ever be able to truly open that third eye, especially with Lewin as his mentor?
Yeah. It's definitely, Lewin is a strong influence over Bran. So, Bran right now is kind of being pulled in opposite directions from the Reeds and Lewin. And, he's known Lewin his whole life. And Lewin, he's accustomed to Lewin being his educator, his advisor, his mentor. So there's a lot of years of following Lewin's guidance versus just having met the Reeds.
Yeah, and Lewin cares for Bran. It's not like Lewin is trying to hurt Bran. He cares for him, and everything he's doing is teaching him what he knows. But perhaps he has a blind spot to something that Bran needs to know. Yeah.
And we learn at the end of the chapter that Bran really was hoping that there might be some truth to magic and supernatural things, because it means there's a possibility of him being whole again.
Yeah. But because he trusts, respects, and loves Lewin, and he tells him straight up that there is no magic left, then, it's hard to... I mean, it's hard for a kid to shake a belief, even if you get that kind of information from someone you trust. But at the same time, it's also hard to hold on to that belief in the face of that from someone you love and trust,
Right. Yeah. Definitely goes back to the whole being pulled in two opposite directions thing here. Well, but it's definitely a bad time for Sir Roderick to have ridden east to settle the issue with the Bolton Bastard and Danella Hornwood.
Yeah. There may be sinister machinations here, but I just think that this boy is completely impulsive, and he saw an opportunity and he jumped on it with very little plan of action.
Yeah, that makes the most sense as to what happened. But, I still throw out that theory that could it be part of a larger plan. We do know back in Cat 8 of A Game of Thrones, when she met up with Robb at Moat Cailin, she mentioned that Roose is cunning. So maybe this is some of his cunningness. Yeah. But it is a good break for the Greyjoys. I mean, as we've mentioned, they have quite the uphill battle to take over the north like they plan to do. So they no doubt need such breaks to pull off such an aggressive plan.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And if you would please go out and leave us a 5-star rate and or a fantastic review, we certainly would appreciate that. And if you do, we just might read it out on a future episode.
Certainly will. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.